Welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host Owen. Guys, welcome to a very wet Midlands of England. Really here, absolutely tipping it down here. Anyway, lots to get on with. Lots of Glasgow Rangers news to talk about today, as we obviously build up towards Saturday's massive game against that mob from across the city, in the Old-Firm game, in a game that could certainly help to, I don't know, either sow a seed of doubt. See this? No, that's not the right word. Sow a seed of doubt, even in their minds, or even perhaps, at the final death knell in the coffin for this year's Scottish Premier League title. It's only a game with an awful lot riding on it, and obviously there is an awful lot of news still swimming around Glasgow Rangers. Now, obviously, I'm not recording on my usual equipment today. I'm recording on my phone, obviously because I am out of the office at this present moment in time, not at home. But as I always promised you, I am dedicated to bring you daily Glasgow Rangers news every single day, no matter what. And that is my job. And that's not my job. That's what I love to do because I am a Glasgow Rangers fan. I love Glasgow Rangers, have since 1987. So let's bring you all the latest news and views and updates from the most successful team in football. John Bennett obviously is the new chairman of Rangers now. And let's face it, John Bennett has a very full inbox as he takes up his job as the new chairman. Now, I know Douglas Park is certainly someone who will divide opinion. There are a large number of fans, obviously, I was listening to Rangers Review on Wednesday morning, and there was obviously a lot of Rangers fans in the comments there. And I think Derek Clark said as much, thanking Douglas Park for his work at Rangers. He put a lot of his own money into the club when we needed it. He got rid of Mike Ashley. He saw us through those difficult times of the COVID pandemic, when a lot of clubs really struggled and a lot of businesses obviously struggled through the COVID pandemic days. On top of that, of course, he oversaw the 55 title, and also he oversaw the run to the Europa League final. So obviously there is, a number of things to thank Douglas Park for. Although I think there is obviously there is a group within the fan base who do not thank Douglas Park, are glad that he is going, and see him as the reason we've fallen so far behind Celtic and have failed to compete. With that mob from across the city, we've really failed to keep up with them, and we haven't really acquired the players due to a lack of finance that has enabled us to keep up with our nearest and dearest. Whatever. Anyway, so John Bennett takes the job, and he's got an awful lot of things, in his inbox when he steps into that job. There's an awful lot of things for John Bennett to consider and to think about as he takes over Rangers as the chairman. Now, obviously, one of the prime amongst them is this summer's revamp and the transfers and what was going to happen with that. Now, Michael Beale said in a press conference that he had more money than previous Rangers managers had to redevelop this squad. Quite what that means and quite how much is unknown. I've seen figures bandied around up to £75 million, which, is certainly not something you should be doing. You should certainly not be releasing or talking about how much money you've got. And obviously, that is pure speculation and paper talk, and I think needs to be taken with a complete pinch of salt. So, but Michael Beale coming out and saying that he has got more money than previous Rangers managers is encouraging. And no matter what you think of Douglas Park, his resignation has come at a very odd time. That statement by Michael Beale, and then the share issue, and obviously the Old-Firm game coming up on Saturday, which is huge. And then suddenly he goes, and it just seems very odd timing given all those other factors that have come in. But anyway, John Bennett's inbox. Like I said, he's got an awful lot to think about transfer planning. Obviously working alongside Stuart Robertson and Ross Wilson, who've come in for an awful lot of criticism, in particular from the Union Bears. On top of that, there is the situation with players who are out of contract, players going to the final years of their contract. There's an awful lot to think about there. Now, I will be dropping a video later today or tomorrow talking about this full inbox and talking about all the considerations that John Bennett has. Anyway, on top of that, he's also got a situation where he's got to consider and think about, how we can keep up with Celtic, how we can overtake Celtic, and plan for that. Now, another issue, obviously, that is there for Bennett to consider is communication. Now, Bennett has long been critical of the communication at the club. In fact, when there has been interviews done by board members, it's not been Park that we've seen interviewed by Rangers TV. It has been Bennett, and he certainly was the main figure post the Europa League final, and has been critical, like I said, in the past, of the way Rangers communicate with the fans and with the media, particularly at board level. So that is probably something that will change going forward. Bennett is a Rangers fan through and through, has been for a great number of years. So we're certainly getting a man who cares about the club at the very top of the club. On top of that as well, he's got considerations to think about how we make a mark in Europe. Obviously we went to the Europa League final on the back of that fabulous run, beating some great teams along in the way, like Dortmund, like Red Star, like RB Leipzig, for example, and then put together one of the most embarrassing, worst Champions League campaigns on record. That's something that Bennett is going to want to address. He's going to want Rangers to be effective in Europe and be a team that can make a mark in Europe, and that's something else for him to consider. On top of that, there's apparently upcoming legal disputes over the Glens vodka sponsorship with the SPL, or as well as that, he's got issues with the fans or a large group of fans who have a distrust of Ross Wilson and Stuart Robertson, trying to obviously back those guys whilst at the same time deal with the criticism that particularly comes from groups like the Union Bears, who absolutely can't stand Ross Wilson and Stuart Robertson, and demanding time for a change when it comes to Robertson and Wilson, hence those banners that have been unveiled. There is, like I said, an awful lot for John Bennett to consider as he takes up the role of chairman. And like I said, I will be bringing out a video exploring these points in more detail. But we've got to place our faith in Bennett. We've got to give him an opportunity to really build this club and continue to take this club forward. This club has come a long way in the last 12 years after the financial disasters of the past. We are back where we belong. We are back competing at the top of the Scottish game. We've been to a Europa League final. We've won a title. We've won a Scottish Cup. And look, yes, in perhaps the time in those 12 years, we haven't perhaps been as successful as we would have liked to have been. But this club is still, I think, in a rebuilding phase. And obviously, we were very lucky, I think, to have Steven Gerrard. And Gerrard, certainly made a huge impact on this club. And I think, obviously, Gio, in a way, kind of, I don't know, let the club slide, and whether that was through bad signings by Ross Wilson and the board, or whether that was just through Gio's inability to get the players fit, who knows? But Bennett certainly has an awful lot of work to do over the coming months, especially as we go towards the end of the season, especially as we move into that pre-season period where obviously it'd be exceptionally vital that Rangers recruit early and recruit well. Now, let's talk about goalkeepers. Now, obviously, there is a strong likelihood that Alan McGregor, who is 41 years old, will retire at the end of this season, although apparently he is ruling nothing out and nothing in. However, if you watch some of the performances by Alan this year, you can see, I think, that his 41 years are starting to catch up on him. I mean, there's times when he should have come for balls and he doesn't, like the Motherwell game away. There's goals that he's let in, like one at Aberdeen, for example, from that free kick that he perhaps in the past would have got closer to. I think Alan has been a fine servant for this club, 500 appearances, and certainly, one of the greatest Rangers goalkeepers of all time, perhaps second only to Andy Gorham, in terms of being the greatest keeper ever. But, he is certainly someone that will be missed, but I think it is time to move on. It is time to look for a new goalkeeper, and that's certainly something that Rangers will have to do this summer. Now, Michael Beale has said already this season, though, that he will give Robbie McCrorie an opportunity to prove himself. The young shot stopper obviously has suffered from a great number of injuries this season and has missed an awful lot of time. Now, Beale, obviously speaking to the media before the Dundee United game, did say even that we would see McCrorie in goal at some point before the end of the season, and that he would give him his opportunity. And it certainly seems from the way that Michael Beale has been talking about McCrorie that he trusts him as a keeper, and he does rate him as a goalkeeper as well. Now, obviously, Rangers are apparently still looking for a goalkeeper despite this. Now, it's up to McCrorie, if he is given the opportunity between now and the end of the season, to prove himself and to show that he is capable of stepping up and taking over the gloves from Alan McGregor. Certainly, at the age McCrorie is, it's very similar to the age that when McGregor stepped up and took over the number one jersey at Rangers. So it could be that, our new goalkeeper one, our new number one, is already at the club in McCrorie. Rangers have been linked with the likes of Angus Gunn, who played recently for the Scottish national team, Freddie Woodman from Preston, and Jack Butland, who is currently on loan at Manchester United from Crystal Palace, but will be available on a free transfer in the summer. There's, I think, still a high likelihood, no matter what happens with McCrorie in these remaining games this season, and no matter what happens over the summer, that Rangers will move and will sign a goalkeeper, someone like a Woodman or a Butland, I think it is increasingly unlikely they will go for someone like Gunn, given the fact that he is obviously with Norwich. Norwich are very much pushing towards the playoffs and the Championship and looking for Premiership football. I think that the price tag that Norwich would put on Gunn could be prohibitive in terms of paying the money for a goalkeeper. Butland, for example, is available on a free transfer in the summer. He is out of contract. With Crystal Palace, so could be had for nothing, and is an ex-England international, and certainly someone who is a very fine keeper, good shot stopper, very commanding of his box, good communicator, and a good leader of men. So Butland could be certainly someone that Rangers fans would like to see between the sticks, and certainly that is something I've read in comments on podcasts like Rabble and Review, from some of my good friends who are Rangers fans who I've spoken to about this. Woodman as well would be around about 1.5 to 2 million, which would not be a prohibitive amount to pay for a new goalkeeper. Butland is 29. I think Woodman's about 24, 25. So both of them obviously have a large number of years ahead of them still in the game and would be sound investments. However, it does appear, though, that Michael Beale will give McCrory his opportunity to prove himself and move on and be Rangers' number one in the future. Now, there's obviously been a lot of talk as well about the players out of contract in the summer, but not just that, some of the players who only have a year left on their deal. So, for example, going into the final year of his, obviously that's Ryan Kent, he is obviously out of contract in the summer, but John Lundstrom is going into the last year of his contract. Not only John Lundstrom, but also Borna Barisic as well is also going into the last year of his contract. Now, Michael Beale has some very important decisions to make, not only with the players who are out of contract, the likes of Ryan Jack, the likes of Scott Arfield, the likes of Alfredo Morelos, Wright, those players like that. Obviously, that list that we've all seen on numerous occasions. He's got some really big decisions to make there. Helander as well, as to what happens with them. Now, I think the strong likelihood and I think the hope amongst a lot of Rangers fans is that Rangers will, of course, retain the services of Ryan Jack, who is seen as being a vital part of this team, even given his injury history. Like I've said on numerous videos, if we can get 20 to 25 minutes out of Jack, 20 to 25 games, out of Ryan Jack per season, it is well worth paying the money. On top of that, another player I think a lot of Rangers fans would like to see return next season is Ryan Kent. Kent is someone who is seemingly starting to find form again. He's someone who's responding well to Michael Beale. After all, he did very well under Steven Gerrard. One of the coaches under Gerrard was Beale, and I think he is a player who responds well to Beale. And I think Beale can get Kent back to where he was previously. And certainly the hope is that Kent can, on Saturday go and show us the player that he is capable of. He has in the past destroyed Celtic and embarrassed them. It is to be certainly hoped that Kent can repeat that on Saturday, go out there and absolutely destroy the green and white mob from across the city. But certainly there are some important decisions to make. For example, the likes of John Lundstrom. Do we obviously use this summer as an opportunity to move him on? We don't want to be in a situation, I don't think, next season where he is playing for another season. He hasn't, particularly improved. He has been very poor in the last 12 months. Less than that. He did very well in the Europa League run, but this season has been very poor, has been injured, has been out of form. And he's certainly someone who has borne a lot of criticism from Rangers fans for his style of play. He's one of the players who was singled out for blame in that Viaplay League Cup final as well. Personally, I don't rate Lundstrom. I think it's time we moved him on. Listening to Sheffield United fans, they talked very much about the first 12 to 18 months at the club. He was very, very good, and then he fell off a cliff. And it seems that he's again following that pattern at Rangers. Given the fact that he is out of contract next summer, this is the opportunity, I think, to move him on and get some extra money and get some money for him. Add on to that as well, we have a decision to make over Borna Barisic. Do we see Borna, who is 30 years old, having a future at this club? Do we want him to continue past next season? Or do we want to move on from Borna? Is Borna someone that we allow to leave? And obviously we turn our attentions to using Ridvan and possibly Devine at left back next season. That is another decision that has to be made upcoming. Obviously, decisions over this man as well, Glenn Kamara. What is the situation with him? Do we move on from Glenn Kamara? I think we could see a large number of players going out this summer, not just those who are out of contract, but those who are in contract as well. Michael Beale, speaking to the media, has very much talked about the fact that, talks have been ongoing and decisions have already been made as regards players' futures, and we'll obviously have to wait to see what happens. Obviously in that short to medium term, as we move towards the end of the season and as the season completes, as to what happens to these players. But we certainly don't want to be in a position with Borna, with Glenn Kamara, with John Lundstrom, where we are facing a situation where again they're out of contract and they could walk away for absolutely nothing. That's bad business. That's bad transfer policy, and I think there is a need there. I think, especially with the likes of Lundstrom, the likes of Kamara, to ship them out, to get rid of them and to try and get some money in. Kamar Roof is another one who is out of contract next year. However, I don't think it is possible to ship out Kamar Roof this summer, as I don't think anyone would want him. I think even a hospital would struggle to buy him, to be honest with you, given his injury history. But this is certainly decisions that are upcoming for the board, upcoming for Ross Wilson, upcoming for Michael Beale, and it is going to be a very busy time for Rangers as we move towards the off season, after these remaining games in the Scottish Premier League, in the Cup, and hopefully in the Cup final as well. This is a very, very important period for Glasgow Rangers, a very, very important period indeed. With these games in April, with massive league games, obviously starting with Celtic at Parkhead on Saturday, continuing obviously with the games that are remaining after that, but finishing off April with that cup semi-final, which I think is one of the most important semi-finals we have played in a long time. Not only is it vitally important for me to stop Celtic winning the treble, but also for Rangers to actually come away from this season with some silverware. Michael Beale, since he's come in, has done a fabulous job. He's, his record is, pretty amazing in the league. For example, he has only drawn one game and won every single game. The last time I think Rangers dropped points before the Celtic game was in November. That was the last loss. I think it was November. Obviously, they lost the Viaplay League Cup final, which was obviously down to team selection, in my opinion. But Beale has done a phenomenal job as Rangers manager, and that's certainly something that we need to praise him for going forward. But this is a very vital period for Rangers, and I think it is imperative that we start on Saturday by giving them a bloody nose and really sending a signal to them that we are not going anywhere, and it's time to sow a seed of doubt in their minds. Anyway, guys, please remember to come back and check out the podcast this evening at about, I think it's 7:15. I've scheduled it for. It's just me tonight, as Victoria has just got home from a busy week's work, but she will be on the podcast on Friday, where we have special guest David Marshall from Heart and Hand. So please come and join us for that, the Celtic preview game. But I am going live tonight on a Glasgow Rangers Nation podcast. I'd love to have you in the live chat with your thoughts, your comments, and your questions. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, as always, here on Glasgow Rangers Nation. I will be back to speak to you very soon indeed. And obviously, keep your eyes peeled for that John Bennett video. And please keep hitting that sub, ringing that bell, and giving the videos a like. It does help, guys. Thank you so much.